Welcome back, friends. This is Chris, and this is your daily news. So the jobs report came out today, and it was stronger than expected. Took a lot of us by surprise, myself included. But you really got to look at the numbers of these things. That's why I want to go over this with you. So first, headlines: U.S. job total surges by over 500,000 in January. Labor market's resilience leads to bond sell-off as investors reassess Fed's interest rate stance. Unemployment falls to 3.4%, lowest in 53 years. You can see the headlines. Obviously, this is a crazy report, and it's like the best in years now. However, this is sort of where it gets tricky. We can see that their jobs are being added, right? In January, about 500,000. And this is sort of like what we saw hiring in March and then also too early last year. One of the things, however, is to understand is where are the jobs being created. It looks like leisure and hospitality, education, you got some construction, you got some government, and the ones that are losing are essentially the tech jobs, the information jobs. Now, we also know that a lot of big tech companies have been firing. We talked about that. FedEx is firing, and also too people in financial jobs. And so one of the things that I've been arguing quite a bit is that yes, you might be able to get a job, but it may not necessarily be the job that you want, and it may not necessarily pay what you want, right? One of the things also to think about as well is wage growth. So I'll read this here together. Wage growth continues to soften despite strong wage gains. Average hourly earnings grew 4.4% in January from a year earlier, down from 4.8% in December. And revisions to unemployment and pay data suggest that the wage growth has been cooling, but at a slower pace than previously thought. If we're hiring or not, are your wages going up or not? And also, too, where are we compared to the pre-pandemic levels? So these are important numbers to look at. So this is saying that total jobs are actually above the pre-pandemic peak, which is really interesting. Because another data which sort of confuses things a bit, and I just want you to understand this one, is participation rates. So this is essentially if you're able-bodied, are you in the workforce system or not? Because the way our unemployment data is calculated, it doesn't count people who basically have quit looking for jobs. It doesn't count people who are also underemployed, which is basically like, for example, let's say I worked at Goldman, right? And I got fired from Goldman, and then I essentially go and become an Uber driver, or I go get a job at Chipotle. It would still count me as employed. But that is clearly not the job that I would want, nor the job that I would pay for my lifestyle that I had before. And you want to pay attention to participation rates because yes, you can measure, unemployment, but if people's just like, I'm not going to look for a job, or with the pandemic thing, I'm just going to retire and not come back. It doesn't like necessarily tell the full numbers of, the situation, right? So we can see that labor participation is still down from what it was in 2020. I'm just showing you guys numbers. Now, it depends who it is though, which is really interesting. So as a whole, the women's labor participation rate is actually getting back to pre-pandemic levels, whereas the male one is not. I'm just showing you guys the numbers. The other thing too, which I want to talk about as well, is the wage growth in terms of charts, because we know that wage growth is slowing. Also, to be fair though, inflation is slowing, and this is sort of the trick is like, are your wages enough, and this is for hourly workers, to pay for the rent in your area? And we had some discussion / argument, we want to say, in comments, because this is always an important discussion to have. And the question I would pose to you is something like a McDonald's, Chipotle, Starbucks, these kind of jobs. Do you consider that a job to where a person should get a living wage and to where someone should have enough money to pay the rent? Because for some people, this depends on your view of that type of job. For some people, they say, oh, Chris, McDonald's is just for high school students. It's just a part-time gig. It's only temporary, and we don't have to pay those people very much money. That would be the argument for that. The argument against that would be, well, there's just not jobs out there for people who are low skilled, right? And so what do you do with people who are low skilled? Just for example, do you say, okay, you have to get training to be higher skilled to take care of yourself? Or do you say, okay, we're just going to give you government benefits, just for example, to help you get by because we understand that things are more expensive? Or, for example, we expect you to have a very, very low standard of living. There's just different ways to think about this. And for example, as you guys know, I lived in several countries. If you live in, like, say, a developing country, like, say, Vietnam, for example, you have which is essentially an ultra rich class and a whole bunch of, like, really poor workers. And the divide can be, like, extremely, divide. Like, you could have essentially the upper class can be traveling around the world, buying luxury items, be it cars, handbags, etc. And then you have workers that might be working for, pennies a day, dollars a day, just this kind of thing. And so the question is, in U.S. society, do we want that sort of society where, we expect, just for example, fast food workers to live at, 10 people to a house, just for example, and then, the richest people live at, say, like houses that could, house 100 people, but just one person lives there. And so this is sort of the discussion, and I'm just sharing with you guys to sort of think about your views on this kind of thing. And I really get it. When I was in high school, because I'm old, I'm pushing 50. Yes, fast food was mostly high school workers, and I don't know exactly, when the change started happening, but I really started noticing it to where you go to fast food places and you don't necessarily see the high school kids there anymore. You see basically people who are going to be doing that as a job for a living, not just a job to sort of pay for your school books and your supplies and this kind of thing, school clothes, etc. As a high school temporary job. So I would say it's different than your perception. So then when we're talking about the Fed, when they're raising interest rates, we expect business activity to slow. So for example, when you raise interest rates, mortgages will go up. Less people will essentially be unable to afford a home. Another example would be, raise interest rates. Rates of auto loans go up unless people are thinking, okay, I really want to get a car for, say, 10% interest rate, these kind of things. So we expect that to happen also too. You would expect companies to hire less people because everything costs more because the cost of money is higher. But it's just sort of interesting is how we see a surge in hiring, but I'm saying look at where the hiring is and also consider all the numbers overall. Again, I want to reiterate, it's really interesting because even some essentially analysts were saying, hey, with the surge of unemployment happening or layoffs happening, we may see more people go back to doing gig work, be it Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, these kind of things. And these people would not be considered unemployed. They are employed, right? But clearly it's different than their job at Goldman or their job at Google, that kind of thing. Now, the White House, obviously politically, they're going to come out and tout that unemployment, is the lowest, was it 53 years, something like that, and everything is great, these sort of things. And of course, any politician would say that. I would dispute the numbers as for the reasons given. And, mostly because, like, yes, there are jobs in the USA, but it's places like Chipotle. And it's the question is, do you consider that a good career or not? Obviously, from Chipotle's point of view, they would say yes. They say ignite your future. And they want to hire 15,000 jobs for burrito season. And I'm not making fun of Chipotle or making fun of anyone working whatsoever, because to be perfectly frank, I think it's a good for a system, right, to have people have jobs and take care of themselves. And I'm fine myself with paying someone a living wage, but this all goes into a whole system, right? Because I think healthcare is an important part of said system, and also education, access to education, and this is also too for any functioning society. You can't have everybody at the top. You got to have bosses and workers. You can't. Not everyone can be a boss. Not everyone is going to be a worker, etc. So I just want you to think about these things. Where are the jobs? However, we are going to be seeing a tumultuous time. Maybe the next 10, 20 years as AI becomes more and more popular and more used at work. This is going to replace a lot of jobs. Automation is going to be one as well. This is some things that I talk about quite a bit. So, if I'm going to be a Kathy Wood fan or anything of these kind of things, or ArkInvest, if I'm betting on something, I personally would be betting on these kind of things, AI, automation, I think. And I think anything that essentially reduces the cost for companies and also to increases efficiency, right? Because if you don't have to worry about workers being sick, why not just hire a robot? It can work 24/7 and no complaining, and you don't have to give it healthcare benefits. So I'm sure companies will look for ways to automate as much as they can. Other news going on, which is also something we've been seeing a trend, is actually the FTC is investigating, or actually the headline is preparing potential antitrust case, but I would call it investigating if the headlines are caught, they're preparing, but they're looking at monopoly possibility for a company like Amazon. And they're saying, like, Amazon, it could be maybe their the way they set up their selling, right, where only certain types of sellers can be on Amazon, and if you're not on Amazon, essentially you can't sell so many products, or the contract terms that Amazon puts for their independent sellers, or how their products are placed at the top of the page, etc. So we're talking about real money here with Amazon. And Google it was under investigation as well. And then Facebook recently, though, however, just won a lawsuit against the FTC. So if you got good lawyers, you can basically do anything you want. So we'll see anything what happens with Amazon. This was an interesting one. I guess there is a Chinese depends who you ask, but a spy balloon, according to the Americans, and the Chinese would say that from China they would say that it is just a weather balloon. Um, I have no idea what's going on, but this thing was flying over Montana, and it could go either way. I'll side with the Americans for now because I'm American, a U.S. citizen. So I'll just say yes, it's a spy balloon, but I have no idea. And why is it doing over Montana is pretty nuts. Now Elon Musk, and talking about nuts things, Elon Musk is um, trial on the whole tweet thing about funding secured. It's coming to an end, and we'll see what the jury decides. I think this is a really important one to watch, and also too, we'll see if any charges or anything come at that. Regarding Elon Musk and false advertising in FSD. So we'll keep track of that. Now, good news for Tesla, and perfectly honest, guys, the Tesla stock has been going fantastic. I am not a Tesla bull. I think it's overvalued. However, to be fair, this was really good news for Tesla. So basically, the IRS changed the way they do rules and essentially made it that more Tesla cars can qualify for EV tax credit. I believe the tax credit is something like 7,500 in the U.S. And one thing is this is for cars that cost under 80 grand. And it's interesting because I was looking at sort of the jobs data report, seeing that Chipotle is hiring and Goldman is firing, example. And I'm asking myself this question, and I just want to pose this question to you. This is a fundamental philosophical question. Do you think people who can afford say $70,000, $80,000 cars, right? These what I would label a luxury car. And if you disagree that 80,000 is luxury, just let me know. But should we be giving tax breaks to people who are buying $80,000 cars? And that's a philosophical question. So my stance is no. I don't think we need to give more tax breaks to people who can afford $80,000 cars. I do want to encourage people to drive electric vehicles. So that I agree with, right? So I'm fine with setting policies to figure out, how can we get more into alternative energy, but I'm not sure if I necessarily want to encourage or help people that are in that tax bracket. So I just want to get your thoughts on these ones, and I think it's an interesting question, just a philosophical question. It's an honest question. Should we give tax breaks for people who are buying cars that cost $80,000? So anyway, I hope hopefully all this stuff is useful and helpful for you, and this has been your daily news.